Hey guys, this is Frank Yecker, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Lieben. This is Diego Sanchez. Randy Couture.
Alistair Overeem.
Hi, this is Stephen Bonner.
This is Don Fry.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis.
TJ Dillashaw.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Submission Radio. Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Welcome to Submission Radio, episode 150. It's Wednesday, the 24th of January. Dennis Schrader here with Kasper Ozolowski, and I'm fresh, Kasper. I'm fresh from a holiday in the beautiful Gold Coast down there in Queensland, fresh off the DC Rivals roller coaster at Movie World, which I rode a whole bunch of times back to back, single line, pretending I didn't know anyone in line. It was like Ocean's 11, the payoff, a thrilling experience on a roller coaster.
Shit, I'd be fresh if I was coming off a holiday like that. I'm an absolute huge fan of the Gold Coast, so I'm very happy for it. I still remember when we went to UFC 214, we took a quick detour to California Adventure Park and Universal Studios, and you were forcing me to sneak into the line, cutting through like hundreds of people, and people were like, "Hey man, what are you doing?" And you're looking up the ceiling like you didn't even hear them. It was a lot of things learned, but you know, we got on the mummy ride, so what can I say? I'm not
and the good thing about it is, because we do have a lot of listeners that don't know what the hell the Gold Coast is, it's a great little part of Queensland where you guys should definitely visit if you ever go down to Australia. Some little theme parks there, and they've got this one called Movie World, which is kind of like Universal Studios, but they build this ridiculous roller coaster. It's definitely much better than any ride that I've ridden over in Universal LA or even Disneyland. The park is just crazy right now. They have so many great rides. So if you guys are looking for a good time, definitely go up there. It is more for the thrill seekers, so if you have younger children, probably stick to more sort of Disneyland type parks. They do have some more kiddish style parks there as well, like SeaWorld and stuff like that, but Movie World is definitely the place to go. And if you guys need advice, just hit up your boys on social media. We'll let you guys know what the best rides. Shows, Batman's there, Joker's there, they do shows. Catwoman's there. There's 2 Catwoman shows, not 1 but 2. That riding. You better believe I know all the schedules back off the back of my head. I'm a bit obsessed with it actually. I always go there a few times. So one time I went on a family holiday with my girlfriend's family, and they wanted to go have a barbecue or something with uncle or something boring like that. And
you were like, not on my
watch.
watch.
"Oh, Dennis, are you coming to the barbecue?" And I go, I really got to go, but the first thing I got to do is I got to go buy my grandfather a hat. Because that's the thing that I do. I buy him hats because he doesn't like any of my presents. I think, a hat's good because then, maybe he'll wear it, maybe he won't, but, it's fun to have hats. So, yeah, I told him I was going to go buy some hats, but went to Movie World instead and ultimately got caught because I was too greedy. You see, I was too greedy. Not only was I at Movie World during off-peak season where all the kids are at school where they belong when I go to Movie World, but also, I started sending a few pics to a few different people I know of me in line with random families on rides and stuff like that. And because I think it's hilarious, sometimes you get a ride photo and you're sitting there, you're like the single rider, but there's like a whole family behind you, and it kind of just looks like you're just like, I don't know, like some kind of ghost of Christmas past. But
you're ruining their family memories.
Yeah, I ruined a family moment, many family moments at Movie World. I've ruined my girlfriend's family moment at the barbecue, and then I got caught red-handed. And the worst part, grandfather didn't even get a hat.
Yeah, they realized, they're like, hang on, Dennis's grandpa doesn't wear hats. He's lying. You're like the unofficial Queensland spokesman. Didn't you convince John Kavanagh to go to Queensland when he was here? We were having lunch, and his like, tour manager or whatever was there, and we're like, "Where are you going, John?" And he's like, "Well, I'm going to Sydney and I'm going to Melbourne." And then you're like, "Why aren't you going to Queensland? You should go to Queensland." And then you start your spiel much like you did now. And then he's like to his manager, "Well, you need to book me to Queensland." His manager looks at you like, "Why the fuck did you say that? Now I got to change his flights." And then, of course, John Kavanagh did go to Queensland, and he thanked you dearly for it. He was like,
he sent me sent us a personal message on Twitter. Him and his missus loved. They loved Queensland, so that was something really cool. And look, again, if you guys want advice, forget about asking us about MMA. If you want advice in the comment section below, ask about what the best ride at Movie World is, showtimes, everything. I've got you guys hooked up. Best times to go there during the year. Good hotels to stay. Me and Kasper stayed at Gold Coast many times. There's some great apartments, some great deals. So definitely, we should do a travel. Oh man, we should do some kind of tourism podcast the way we're going. But anyway,
we should have Robbie Lawler on to talk about Disneyland.
If you guys missed that classic interview of me and Kasper when we went up for UFC 214, possibly some of the most hate that we've ever gotten from media and listeners and watchers alike when we want to really get that follow up from Robbie Lawler as to which roller coasters in Disneyland he goes on. and which ones he likes the most. You know, it starts really, really rough, and you think, well, maybe we can win him over at this point, but
Nope.
no, it gets a lot worse.
I feel
so if you
like
guys want to find that on our channel and have a good bit of a laugh at Robbie Lawler just destroying us, definitely do that.
I feel like he started it. He brought up Disneyland, and we thought, ooh, common ground, because we're going in a couple of days, and he didn't want a bar of it. We were like, where'd you go? And he's like, Disneyland. We're like, what rides did you ride? And he's like, rides. It's like, well, very good, sir. But yeah. Anyway, we've got some more people to talk to this week that hopefully we won't piss off. Actually, we got a lot of fun people to talk to. We're going to kick off this show with Tyson Pedro and Tai Tuivasa, just two of the rascals that are fighting on the UFC 221 Perth card. Good friends, brothers in arms, family members, and they're part of the whole Samoan crew. Them and Mark Hunt just tearing it up, causing all sorts of trouble and entertainment. So we're going to have both of them on at the same time. They have a podcast, the Half Cast podcast. They do that together. Obviously training partners as well. So we figured, you know what, let's do a 2-for-1. We'll get them both on at the same time and just have a fun interview. Just rap, just ask fun, silly questions, get to know them a little bit, maybe talk a little bit about UFC 221. So that's going to be a fun way to kick off the show. We've also got UFC Hall of Famer, the first ever welterweight champion, Pat Miletich, coming on the program. He's going to be talking about a whole variety of things. I mean, he's Croatian. Stipe Miletich is Croatian. Of course, they're going to be talking about that fight, the welterweight division as it currently stands. GSP, if he belongs in the welterweight division now in 2018, this Khabib versus Tony fight, and of course he does great commentary for Axis Fights, so we're going to talk about some of the most exciting things happening on the regional scene. Before we speak to our good friend Sean Sheehan, we'll be closing the interview portion of the show with Colby Covington. I mean, you know, you talk about rascals. You can't leave Colby Covington off the list. We don't really know what's going on with him. A lot of people are wondering when he's going to be fighting next. What is the future? Is he fighting Tyron Woodley, RDA? What happened with Kamaru Usman accusing him of dodging him in St. Louis? So there's a lot to speak to Colby about, and I just want to get a feel for the guy. And then, of course, we've got one more guest, don't we, Dennis?
That's right. The man of the hour. He lost. We always bring this up, but he lost the game of FIFA, the media challenge. Everybody abandoned him. He was, I suppose, to many, a disgrace. But to us at Submission Radio, there was still some love for him. He finally got his sleeping pattern back on track. He was finally able to wake up in the morning, go to bed at night, live a normal life. Probably met a nice girl in the process, and then bang, Submission Radio's back, and we need him on the show. We wake up poor Sean Sheehan to join us on the program. It's really cold in Ireland, which doesn't help, and I hope he's got a warm hoodie cast because there's a lot to talk about. We have to talk about the big main event from UFC 220, of course, Stipe Miletich versus Francis Ngannou. Of course, DC getting the big win over Volkan as well in the co-main event. What does this mean? What's the future hold? Where is this all going? What about Brock Lesnar? Is he coming back? Dana White says he might be. What would be a good matchup for him? We got to dig into that, and also this Tony Ferguson-Khabib situation. What are they fighting for? What are they fighting for? In The Simpsons, Homer Simpson fought for a sandwich. Is there a sandwich on the line? We discuss it, and if it is a sandwich, is it an interim sandwich or a full sandwich? Is it on whole meal, rye? What's the deal? We'll figure that out and figure out what kind of implications this might bring if, of course, the title is not aligned. What's the best thing for the guys, whether Conor is champion or not, and why is the UFC keeping him as champion? Is it because of some of these theories that are floating around? We'll get to all of that, and of course, guys, before Casper gets to introducing the next guest, we just have a little bit of announcement. Next week, no Submission Radio. A lot of hearts breaking out there, Casper. No Submission Radio next week.
Yeah, no heart broken more than mine for various reasons. First of all, because I feel like we're getting a bit of momentum. January starts, we come back, we do our preview show, a lot of good reactions. Now we've got this episode, and I want to keep the momentum going straight into UFC Perth. But unfortunately, my girlfriend of many years, I think we hit our 9-year anniversary over in November. She's leaving to go interstate. Got a great job offer. She's going over to Queensland, or to Brisbane more specifically. So she'll be riding the roller coasters without me. I'm stuck here in Melbourne, but I will be helping her with the move. That big move is next week, and it's a big thing. Never done the long distance thing, so I'm going to be helping her. You got to be a good boyfriend, like every now and then. I'm not always a good boyfriend, but like once a year. And this is her once a year. You know what I mean? She's like, "Can you help me move?" And I'm like, "No." And she's like, "Come on." And I said, "All right, fine. We'll just hold Submission Radio for you so you can move to your stupid fancy job." So anyway, that's basically what's happening. I got to help her, and unfortunately won't be doing an episode. But shortly afterwards, UFC Perth is right around the corner, so we'll be covering the crap out of that. And as with UFC Sydney, I know it wasn't a huge card, but I think we delivered on the content. We'll be delivering just like that, if not more so, for UFC Perth. So fear not, plenty of content coming to the channel. But next week, nothing, no submission radio. But we'll think about you, maybe. A little bit. We probably will. We'll be thinking about you. Anyway, in the meantime, don't forget to tweet us at SubmissionAUS. Follow us on Facebook as well. We're very easy to find. DM us, email us, info@submissionradio.com. Many people can attest. We love chatting to you guys, and you guys will be in our hearts. Always, always, and forever until we come back. But in the meantime, guys, it's the guests are waiting. They're waiting patiently. There's not one, but two of them. And I believe, Dennis, you're about to introduce them.
All right, guys. Both of our next guests are fighting in UFC 221 in Perth, Australia. Not only are they close friends and family, but they also co-host the hilariously entertaining Half-Cast podcast. Their Instagram describes them as just two kids from the area. It's a pleasure to welcome Tyson Pedro and Tai Tuivasa to Submission Radio. Boys, welcome to the program. It's a real pleasure having you on this early morning.
Thanks for having us, man. It was a bit of a mess around, but we're here.
Nah, it's great. The boys are finally here. It's a 2-for-1 combo. There's obviously a lot to talk about. Before we get into UFC 221, since your fellow broadcasts like us, you've got obviously the Half-Cast podcast. We want to grab your thoughts on the big fights this past weekend. Tyson, since it's your division, we'll start with you. What did you think of Cormier's win this past weekend over Volkan Ozdemir?
Yeah, I was devastated. I missed it.
Really? What were you doing? Yeah. What better things did you have to do than watch the fights?
We'll record the episodes of the podcast.
Ah.
I flew up to Queensland where Ty's been training to come record a couple of episodes. We tried to rush down, but we only got the end of the Nagano fight after we finished. So, yeah, I heard he just beat him up. Just too skilled. Had more tools. So, no, I wasn't too surprised with that Stipe fight.
See, Tyson, that's the first rule of analyst work broken. Even if you haven't seen the fight, you just read about it and pretend like you have. Never exactly. Admit the truth on the podcast. But Tai, I was going to ask you, since you guys did catch the end of that Ngannou fight, what did you think of Miletich's win? Because there's been some criticism there. Some people believe, he should have finished Ngannou off. A lot of people impressed with Miletich. They believe he's one of the best heavyweights of all time. What do you sit on that?
I saw both the fights.
There you go, Tyson. There's dedication on 1.5.
We were late. So he's just throwing me under the bus.
What did you think, Tai, of the way Stipe
I got in first. I thought that I knew that's how the fight was going to go. If Francis didn't beat him within the first two, I thought that was how it was going to go. So I wasn't really surprised. I actually thought Francis would have had better wrestling, but he didn't. So
I was surprised how much they were zapped. To be honest, out of that first wrestle, it was like that initial first wrestle, and then they were just bang. That was it. You can see how much it's taken to move around those two big bodies.
In your opinion, what do you think that comes down to? Obviously, you're in the gym every day training. Do you think that comes down to a lack of sort of wrestling training? Do you think that's maybe just lack of cardio training? Or do you think maybe it's just the way Ngannou's built? He's not really built for the long rounds.
They trained, they would have been training their asses off. But I think like that initial first wrestle when you grab someone and you're just going, okay, let's get him down, and you're fighting so hard that you're in the gym, you're not really doing that in the first minute of any like sparring session. Let's go as hard as we can and then try and drag out. Usually you're trying to do your 3 or 4 rounds.
Well, Tai, tell us a little bit. I mean, you guys do an amazing job of breaking down the fight. So for people outside of Australia, because we know your story, you guys have a great story. For people in America or overseas over there in Europe listening right now, tell us a little bit about how you guys first met. And did you guys know initially when you first met, when you think back to it, that you guys would be such close friends, training partners, and now co-hosts of a podcast? We'll go with you first, Tai.
We've known each other for a little bit now. But, some things weren't planned out, like me having a baby to his sister. But,
He got me.
It happened. But, since everything's fallen into place, so it's all gone well, and we're just starting off, I think.
We imagine obviously the family gatherings. We know all the the Samoans and the Polynesians. You guys are famous for your barbecues. We imagine there's a lot of obviously with you guys being both UFC fighters. Is there non-stop MMA talk at these barbecues, or is it just
Never.
business doesn't belong there? Is that the way it is?
No, I don't think I talk about fighting ever. So I'm not really a fighting head. I just like to actually fight. If that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And we know, obviously, you guys have this great podcast going. Tyson, tell us a little bit about who came up with the idea to do the Half-Caste podcast, because we know we've listened to a few episodes. It's hilarious. It's a great mix. It was a great idea putting this thing together. How did this thing all come together initially?
I'm pretty sure we were sitting in the house and we were watching these two guys just laughing and teasing each other and just teasing funny videos, and we were like, "Oh, let's do this. I reckon it'll be funny as." And it just never eventuated. Like how it is when you do it in your first episode. Like, man, I don't know how to do this. I don't know where to start. And then actually, Mark Dow, one of my business managers, and I got on Bloke in the Bar with Dean and Kemp, and they were both like, "Man, just record it, and it doesn't matter how bad or good it is on the first one. Just record it and learn from there." And so I just told Ty, bro, let's do this. I've got some of our friends, Rise Media, Jaquil, Eddie, to just record us. And yeah, that's how it started. And it started moving a lot quicker than we could have imagined. So we started getting some names in there almost on the second and third episode.
Oh, wow. And how many episodes are you guys up to now?
We just recorded our 6th, I think, with, I'm not sure if you heard of him, Fortify from... he was a rapper, and he made that color switch app. Okay. If you've ever played that color switch app, yeah, sold that to developers, and now lives in Dubai. So, yeah, that was our first non-professional athlete, and hopefully we can keep doing more.
Well, there you go. Well, obviously, there's a lot of great content coming out. We're going to play a bit of a fun game. Dennis, I think you're going to introduce it.
All right, guys. So, because you guys are so close, we want to test how well you guys know each other. So we have 3 questions to ask each of you, and this is how it's going to work. For example, when we ask you questions, Ty, you answer the question, and then Tyson, you have to confirm if it's true or false. The person with the highest score is the person that knows the other man the best, and I suppose the big winner here today. So, Ty, we're going to ask you questions about Tyson first. 3 questions. First question, what's Tyson's favorite movie of all time?
You know we're boys, we're not lovers, I think, man, he watches like movies every day, so I don't know.
I guess it's a tough one because there's so many to choose from. And anything that you recall watching with him, maybe a single tear that Tyson shed, and you thought that's his movie right there.
No idea. I don't watch movies.
Help Ty out, Tyson. What was the answer he was looking for?
Probably be like The Last Samurai.
Oh,
that's a good movie.
Yeah.
Don't even know what the hell that movie is.
I thought you were going to drop some porn names on us or something like that for a second. I thought I didn't word that question very well. All right, next question, Ty. Forget about that. Let's move on. Second question. Tyson has to pick one karaoke song. He can only pick one karaoke song to sing in the bar. What song does he pick?
I'd go with like Mariah Carey, but he can't sing, so
yeah,
I don't know.
That's a strong one. Mariah Carey is that the one, Tyson?
Yeah, I'd have to confirm that.
Okay, awesome. Keep it general because I want to give.
I was going to say, which song? Because we want to prove that you're not being just a nice guy and letting Ty off. Which Mariah Carey song?
No. I love a bit of fantasy.
Oh, there you go. He wasn't lying.
All right, Ty, this is the final question. So you've got 1 point. We'll give you 1 point, 1 question wrong, 1 question right. Last question. What is Tyson's secret celebrity crush that no one knows about?
Oh,
this will be interesting.
I reckon it'll be a boy for some reason. For some reason, I think it'll be a boy.
Oh, yeah.
Probably.
It's all coming in now.
So for some reason, no one knows that I'm gay.
He loves movies. He loves male celebrities.
Which male celebrity stands out, Ty?
I'll go to Rock or something. I don't know.
You know what? I can't really. I can't really blame him. Tyson, any truth to that?
If we were picking males, then yes, it would be The Rock. But
I think we're all on the same page there. I mean, The Rock's pretty awesome.
He's a beautiful man. He's a beautiful man.
Well, you know what? We'll say you got that one right, Ty. So you're 2 for 1. Now, Tyson.
They're sketchy too.
It's your turn. So we got 3 quick questions for you about Ty. So we'll see how many of these you can get right. Ty has to choose one food to eat for his last meal. What is it?
It'd be like meat or something. He just eats like big food. I don't know if he has a favorite dish. But I know it'd be like meat or something.
So he's a bit of a carnivore. Does that sound about right, Ty?
He's spot on.
Spot on. 100%. All right, second question. It's time to drink at the bar. You boys are out somewhere at the local. What's Ty's favorite drink of all time? What's he drinking?
Jimmy and lemonade. Jimmy and Sprite.
Is that right, Ty?
Jack and Sprite.
Jack and Sprite.
Oh, got him.
Well, it's still a brown spirit, so I feel like we can give you maybe a half point.
Jim and Jack, but he's on the Jim and Jack. Any of them.
All right, last one for you, Tyson. So you're not in training camp. The night out is finishing up early. You boys are out. It's finishing around 4 a.m., so it's a really, really early one, obviously. Ty can only have one type of post going out food before heading home. We're thinking maybe Souvlaki's, KFC, McDonald's, Hungry Jack's. These are just some of our favorites as well. We want the destination and the meal he chooses.
Oh, that doesn't matter. And it wouldn't be at 4 a.m.
When would it be?
but we'll go with KFC if it were out of those ones.
Ty, can you confirm or deny?
No, he's on. Spot on. and he's spot on about that 4 a.m. We're not finishing up at 4 a.m.
When he finishing up? That's a bit too early, right?
So then I got my other half point back for that one.
Yeah, that's true. So you're on 1, 2. So Tyson's pretty much on 2.5, and Ty's on 2. So it's a pretty even score. Tyson's technically the winner. It's like a split decision. But what time would you be finishing then, Ty, if not 4 a.m.?
Well, hopefully the club finishes at 4 a.m. and then I don't know. Someone's got an after party.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what.
P.S. Ty, you didn't write back to my text messages while you've been driving back home, so I left my keys in your car, so I can't get home from the airport.
Damn, it's all happening here. It's all happening here on the show, and who knows? Maybe you guys are still out. All we know, it's only about 9 in the morning, so it might be too early to finish right now as well. As we move on with the interview, though, guys, we do want to touch on UFC 221. It's a cliche question, and everybody's going to ask you guys this question. Is going to be asked hundreds of times as you go into the event. So we want to be the first ones to do it. How does it feel to be on this card together? Obviously, it's a big card for Perth. A lot of people are really excited about it. Both of you guys are on this big card together along with Mark Hunt. Tyson, give us your thoughts first. How does it feel to be on there with Ty and Mark Hunt?
Yeah, it's amazing. I've told this story a few times. When we were younger, we were on MSN and we were messaging each other, talking to each other, saying how well each of us are doing. And we were just joking about how we can't wait till we get to the top and be in the UFC fighting together. So it's a pretty big deal for me. And I think people underestimate as well how big of a thing it is. Two kids that were hanging out and grew up together, and then are still on in the biggest fight promotion in the world. So it's a massive deal for me. And then even to be with Mark, he's a really good dude, and I've always looked up to him as a fighter as well. So I know it's a bigger deal for Ty. But yeah, Ty, tell him how happy you are to be fighting with me, and how much it means to you, because you know when you cried last night about it when you were telling me. Just tell him that. Tell him that
No, for me, it's massive. Just like Tyson said. Obviously, when you say something out loud and then it comes true, I think it means 100 times more. But not only just that, but we're family. my son gets to look up to not only just his father, also his uncle, and we just, and like I said, 2 kids from the area, and we get to show everyone else, maybe dreams do come true, and it's massive. But I was a bit gutted at Sydney that I couldn't share the stage with Tyson or Mark, but some things happen for a reason, and now we get to show the world all in one night. But we're taking over for real.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I'm pumped.
I feel like if UFC were bringing back those nicknames for pay-per-views, like UFC Redemption, UFC Knockout, they should bring back one for this one, maybe something like UFC 221. It's us again, because you've got the whole crew, Tyson, and Mark. As we let you guys go, because we're running out of time, just quickly, Ty, you've obviously got Cyril Asker. What do you know about him? Are there any flying attacks that you've secretly got planned for this one? And what is the official prediction? How do you see yourself getting it done on the night?
I'm flying to the bar straight off.
flying knee to the bar. I love it. Well, Tyson, what about yourself? You're obviously facing Saparbek Safarov, largely unknown to the casual fans. What do you think about him as your matchup, and what is the official prediction from you?
Yeah, he's pretty wildly unknown to me as well. But I don't know. For some reason, I want to cut him up. So I have a feeling the ref's going to stop this one from, I don't know, cuts or something.
Wow. Well, it's going to be an exciting night. And guys, make sure to tune into the Halfcast podcast. You can carry on with more of this conversation. The guys are hilarious. Their insight is really, really cool. And they get a lot of great guests from a wide range of backgrounds on there. So you guys are always going to get some great guests and some great information from the show. You can check out the show and follow the show on Instagram. That's _Halfcast_podcast. That's youtube.com/the Halfcast Podcast. And, of course, check them out on Facebook, Halfcast Podcast. And follow the guys on Twitter at Bam Bam Tuivasa and Tyson_Pedro. Check them out at UFC 221, live from Perth, Australia, on Sunday, Feb 11th for all the Aussies, and Saturday, Feb 10th for our US listeners. Just a couple of guys from the block, but they've taken over a pay-per-view, and it's a pleasure to have you guys on Submission Radio. Thanks for taking time from your drive and trip to the airport for coming on the program. We really appreciate it, guys.
No worries. Thank you very much for having us on again, guys. It's always good. Cheers, bro.
This is Chael Sonnen, and you are listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. Our next guest is a UFC Hall of Famer, the UFC's first ever welterweight champion. He runs insane 100-kilometer-plus ultramarathons like the Leadville 100. And, of course, you know him from his excellent commentary on Access TV fights. He is the legend himself, Pat Miletich. Pat, welcome back to the program. How are you?
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I'm doing great.
And it's great to have you back on the show. And what a perfect timing, seeing as your fellow Croatian, Stipe Miletich, got the big win this past weekend. We see your Twitter timeline is flooded with pro-Stipe tweets. Was the Croatian flag flying high at the Miletich residence? And what were the celebrations like for you over the weekend?
Well, I mean, I don't think I've ever been more sure of a title defense in my life, and I'm really not joking. The reason being, I knew that, worst case scenario, Stipe could take him down and rough him up and wear him out, which is exactly what happened. And so, I'm happy for Stipe. It's, cemented himself as the best heavyweight ever, and rightly so, man. It's really, really cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, give us your thoughts on the fight itself. Obviously, Stipe being able to weather the early storm, wearing Francis down. I mean, I think you're one of the few people that were so sure of it. A lot of people sort of saw it as a coin flip. What did you think of, I guess, the end result once it was all done?
I guess the only reason I was so sure was because I knew Ngannou couldn't wrestle, right? I knew he couldn't stop takedowns. So that was the thing. And so that, more than anything, and I mean, I don't really bet on fights. I don't bet on anything, but I'm kind of kicking myself in the ass. I wish I would have bet on that fight going the distance. I think the odds were pretty crazy on it.
How much do you think you would have bet if you're a betting man? I'm curious.
Because I'm pretty reserved in that sort of stuff. I mean, a couple $100 probably.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I kind of thought Ngannou would gas more and get finished, to be honest with you, too. I mean, I just didn't have a doubt that Stipe was going to win. But I saw a lot of stuff online. was a lot of people saying Ngannou was going to crush him, and I just looked at also I'm not trying to knock Ngannou, but I mean if you look at his striking, he hits like a truck, but there's no technique. I mean literally very little technique, and he has zero defense when he's throwing bombs. I mean he gets very wild, and obviously when he puts that much into it, he leaves himself wide open. So I just didn't see any other outcome, to be honest with you.
You mentioned earlier in the interview when we began how Stipe, kind of cemented himself as the best heavyweight of all time. Do you believe that he surpasses a lot of the greats, guys like, for example, Fedor? And what's, I suppose, the argument behind Stipe being the best of all time? Because I suppose there's still people out there that think he's maybe 1 or 2 title defenses away from sort of cementing that legacy.
Well, I mean, when I say greatest, I'm saying greatest UFC heavyweight of all time. Fedor in his prime, boy, that's tough to bet against that guy, isn't it? So that's the thing is, Stipe's right there with Fedor. But Fedor he's my favorite fighter of all time in terms of, 10 years undefeated. Pretty amazing guy.
And then with this win, do you think Stipe will sort of now get the respect that he deserves, from the UFC in terms of marketing and, with Stipe's blue collar, everyman personality and kind of reservation towards fight promoting, how do you think you should, or I guess the UFC should promote Stipe best?
Well, Jesus, he's a fireman. How can you not get more American than being a fireman? That guy should be everybody's favorite fighter, just a hardworking guy, a blue-collar guy like you mentioned. I mean, that guy represents, kind of the American ideal, to be honest with you. Just a rugged, tough, hardworking man that ended up on top of having a job. Who do you know out there that holds a job like that fights at that level and wins the world title and holds it for this long? I don't think there's very many people out there that are actually holding down a job while fighting at that level.
I agree with you.
As a world champion, you know what I'm saying? So I think the only respect Stipe deserves now, in my mind, is get paid like the heavyweight world champion.
Because one of the big discussion points afterwards was there was this moment where Stipe took the belt off Dana White and instead got his coach to put it around his waist. And he later said it's because his coach respects him. What did you make of that and how it reflects on his relationship with Dana White? I won't read into anything. That's because I don't know for a fact any of it. I think that just the fact that a coach that put a ton of work into to Stipe, in my mind, he kind of deserves to be the person putting the belt around him anyway, you know what I mean?
I guess sort of looking forward, the fight that everybody's now talking about is Stipe versus Cain Velasquez at some point, just due to their similar styles. Some people believe that Cain is very similar to Stipe, but maybe with better cardio. Is that the one that you'd like to see, Pat? And who do you think you'd favor if and when that did happen?
That'd be one hell of a fight. Cain's a great fighter. I'm definitely a fan of Cain. I still would go with Stipe if I was going to bet in that one. Then we got to see what kind of Cain Velasquez comes back, right? We haven't seen Cain for quite a while.
Well, speaking of titles, as the first ever UFC welterweight champion, we want to kind of get your thoughts on the current welterweight title picture as well, and who's next for the champ. You've got Rafael dos Anjos, who recently beat your good friend Robbie Lawler. Then there's Colby Covington, who made quite the storm last year. Who do you think makes sense more as Tyron's next challenger?
Boy, I tell you what, watching that Lawler fight against Dos Anjos, I was sitting there going, there's no way this guy lasts 2 rounds with Rob. I have no idea what the hell is going on. And then we find out he trashed his knee early on in the fight. He couldn't fight. He really couldn't even walk hardly. So I was wondering why he was losing his balance and stuff. So I knew something was going on. But Dos Anjos gets destroyed by Woodley. That's not even a fight in my mind. I think Woodley puts him away pretty quick, to be honest with you. There's so many tough guys in that weight division that I just see it. There's a lot of different directions they could go with that. So I'm not really sure. I would like to have seen Lawler, obviously, if he would have won his last fight. And I think Dos Anjos was being given to Lawler, quite frankly. I thought that was a fight that was to make Lawler look really good so that they could do the rematch between Woodley and Lawler.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you there. From what you may have seen from Colby Covington, do you think that has the potential to be a bit more competitive than how you see RDA versus Tyron Woodley?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Covington's a nut job, isn't he?
he is a little bit. How do you think that fight would play out? Because I guess a lot of people see him sort of like still raw in the striking aspect, but obviously very, very good wrestling. Do you think that would give Tyron some problems potentially?
I think it ends up being an absolute all-out war, to be honest with you. I mean, it'll be all over the mat, standing up, striking. I think it'll go all over the place. And I apologize that my 4-year-old just woke up from her nap. So if she's talking during the interview, I really apologize.
That's okay. The more the merrier here at Submission Radio. What we're speaking about the division, Pat, a lot of people expect GSP to drop back down to welterweight after his middleweight title win. But now he's sidelined with colitis. His future remains unclear. From what you know about George and the type of fighter that he is mentally, do you think he'll return if he can get healthy again? And if this illness takes a long time to heal from, do you think it might be too late for GSP to make another comeback?
I would love to see him come back at 170 and do that against Lawler, because that's a perfect matchup for Lawler. And I had not even heard about his colitis, and I know that that's not a good deal to be going through. So, I hope he gets healthy at least.
Can I ask you, what do you know about colitis? Because I feel like a lot of people, the people who speak about it, who have been through it or know someone who have been through it, know how serious it is, whereas a lot of, I guess the rest of us who have never had it sort of look at it as we don't really know how bad it is.
Well, it's a severe intestinal situation. I think the inflammation gets horrible, and I've got a couple friends that have it and have had to have large sections of intestines removed and all kinds of stuff. It can get pretty severe, and I think in some cases can cause death. So,
wow,
not something that I wouldn't wish on anybody. So it's pretty severe.
And you host a podcast dedicated to conspiracy theories. Did you buy into the theory that GSP was never going to keep fighting, and that his plan was always to come back for one fight and one fight only, win another belt and make some money and leave again?
To be honest with you, I mean, yeah, I thought that he would come back for the Bisping fight, perfect fight, and I thought my 4-year-old is bossing me around. You guys, sorry, hold on. I thought he would come back and do one fight against Bisping, perfect matchup, and win, and go back to relaxing, hanging out.
I know you said that you wanted to see him fight against Robbie Lawler, and that would obviously be a great fight. I guess at one time Robbie Lawler was the champion, so it'd be kind of like the past and the present, but now they're both kind of two old school guys. The other sort of rumor mill floating around is that the UFC might try and do him versus Conor McGregor. Do you think that's sort of a realistic fight at all? Do you think that would make sense in light of what's happening with the lightweight division at the moment? And do you see that as even a winnable fight for McGregor?
Well, it certainly makes the UFC a ton of money and makes both those guys a lot of money. So that's, the one that makes a lot of money is the one that's most likely, right? So do I think McGregor wins that fight? No. George takes him down and roughs him up. He's just too big for him.
Well, we're on the topic of McGregor.
I'll be honest, at my age, if I'm in just fighting shape, I'm not going to beat McGregor in a fight, but I can take him down. So, I'm from Iowa. Come on.
Well, while we're talking about McGregor, were you surprised when the UFC announced that Tony Ferguson would be facing Khabib for the undisputed lightweight belt? However, wouldn't officially confirm that they'd strip McGregor off the title?
Well, it's the fight that makes sense, obviously. I think it sets up... I don't think McGregor's coming back to the UFC. I mean, unless he's going to be fighting like George St. Pierre for huge money, he's not coming back. It's just not... I don't see it happening. You don't go from fighting Floyd Mayweather for $100 million to fighting in the UFC for $10 million. You just don't. Unless you pull a Mike Tyson and go bankrupt because you blew all the money you spent. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting because I know Tony Ferguson was saying that apparently he did get a contract to fight McGregor, and then somehow that contract was pulled, and then they pulled a bit of a 180, a Rochambeau. Do you think maybe it just came down to maybe McGregor was somewhat interested in fighting, but then it was failed negotiations where maybe him and the UFC couldn't agree on what it was worth?
To be honest with you, yeah. I mean, like I said, he just got done fighting Mayweather. He made, I mean, what's the estimates? What's the best estimates on what McGregor made in that fight?
I think around about 100 million, give or take.
So you got to ask yourself, if you made $100 million in a fight, you did all that work for all those years, worked your way up, and talked your way into a super fight with Floyd Mayweather, made $100 million. I'm just not taking the pay cut, guys. I'm just not. It's not. I just don't see it happening unless it's, like I said, a fight with George St. Pierre where they both make potentially $50 million.
And I guess the big discussion around the UFC as it is now, Pat, and you as the first welterweight champion, have a lot to weigh in on this, is the fact that championships don't really mean as much as they used to. I mean, at one point we spoke about the fact that, look, these championships don't mean very much because people are jumping the queue and getting title shots over more ranked fighters. But now the discussion is what's going on with all the interim titles. For example, over in Perth, there's going to be another interim title introduced. We've seen interim titles introduced in a lot of weight classes. Here in lightweight, people aren't sure if McGregor's still champion or not. The UFC won't confirm it. What do you make of the situation around title shots right now? And are they the most meaningless now as they've ever been, in your opinion?
Yeah, unless it's for titles in organizations where kids are trying to get to the UFC, right? Like the LFA and CES in America. The LFA and CES have become kind of the conveyor belts into the UFC. So guys, and a lot, guys haven't necessarily even won titles and gotten into the UFC from those organizations, but for the most part, I mean, I can't even remember the total number of guys that have made it to the UFC out of those two organizations, but it's pretty substantial. I think, gosh, per year they're averaging, at least LFA, 30-some guys, at maybe more, quite frankly. And CS has just put a bunch in for the last Boston card. So those title belts definitely mean a lot. And the guys that are coming up in the UFC that are fairly fresh, yeah, they want that UFC title. But overall, it's kind of about asses in seats and being popular and doing those types of matchups where you're going to make a bunch of money, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're going to talk about LFA and CES in just a second. Before we do, just curious, I mean, as far as early predictions go, between Tony and Khabib, who are you giving the edge to in that one?
Who would you guess I'd bet on?
Well, you seem to be a fan of wrestling, and you are from Iowa, so I mean, they're both good wrestlers, but I would say you're probably going to pick Khabib. Would I be right?
I'm probably going to go with Khabib, yeah. Going to go with Khabib.
Do you think he'll get it done as easily as his last few fights? Because his last few fights have been just destruction, domination. I
think once he gets the ball rolling, man, he's awful tough to stop. He's a lot like a Ben Askren who they just can't do anything to get him off. He's just constantly on him like a wet blanket. They can't do anything about it. He grinds them down, and they just get so frustrated they can't do anything about it. So that's just the way those two fight. And if you can't stop a takedown against those guys, which not very many people walking the planet can, you're just not going to win.
Well, you touched on LFA before, so let's talk about that. There's some great fights on this Friday on Access TV. LFA 32 with 2 title fights. There's the vacant middleweight title between Brendan Allen and Anthony Hernandez. There's also the inaugural light heavyweight title fight between UFC veteran Alex Nicholson and Ryan Spann. So, Pat, which one are you excited for most?
I'm excited about both those fights, to be honest with you. Brendan Allen's a guy that's fallen short before in fighting for the title. And, so he's very motivated. He's gotten close, went through a 5-round battle, before to try and get that title. He's still very young, but he's got a real bright future. Hernandez is a guy that a lot of people, at least when I talk to the fighters, don't think that Hernandez deserves the shot to be there because it's his first time on Access TV. But he's a very tough guy. He's got a great record. So, that one will be interesting. And then Ryan Spann against Nicholson will be very good too. Spann's a guy that, I saw Spann as I looked at him and he's kind of like the perfect prototype to be a fighter physically. And he was kind of a happy-go-lucky guy, having a good time, kind of kind of being Mr. Hollywood to a certain extent. And then I think after some tough losses, I think it's changed him mentally. I think he's buckled down quite a bit. He's all business now. So Spann, in my mind, is the favorite going into that fight against Nicholson, who's also very tough. But Spann's kind of a changed guy. He's grown up a little bit, or a lot, from taking a couple losses.
It'll be interesting to see how Nicholson also settles in, because he's been at a few weight classes, been at middleweight, has been at heavyweight, and now fighting for a light heavyweight belt. So that should be interesting. And then obviously the following Friday, and of course you'll be commentating all of these. The following Friday you got CES MMA 47, where Travis Wire fights Greg Rebello for the vacant heavyweight belt. And for those who don't know, obviously Travis' current record sits at 75-21. He's one of the as far as longevity, it doesn't get better than Travis Wire, and he's obviously been fighting since 2001. Have you spoken to Travis recently, Pat? And have you had the chance to ask him what the secret to longevity is?
No, I haven't talked to him for a while. He used to come and train at my gym a lot when I was coaching. And it's kind of interesting. I didn't know how to pronounce his last name many, many years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it was. I asked him, I go, how the hell do I say your last name? He said it's a View.
Oh,
View,
wow.
like V-I-E-W.
Yeah.
View. So Travis he's always been a very good wrestler, not a aesthetically pleasing striker. I mean, he hits hard, very strong guy. Greg Rebello has a big advantage in the striking area, but Travis has good enough wrestling that if he gets Rebello down, Rebello may have a tough night.
And obviously a lot of people excited for CES MMA 47. Apart from that fight, anything else stand out to you? Something that fans may not be focusing on, but should be a great fight on the night?
I tell you, well, I'm thinking, down the road, the LFA in Dallas in the middle of February, even Macy Barber's coming back to fight. She's fighting a girl named Catherine Roy, and Macy Barber is I tell you what, you talk about tough. That girl, people need to YouTube her fights. That girl is like a little miniature storm, blast to watch. And then Sabina Mazo's coming up also, coming up on LFA, and she's what, I think 4-0 now in Muay Thai, and she's got really good kickboxing. She looks like, I don't know how to explain it. When she's fighting, you would never picture this girl fighting ever, and she's head kick knocking out, just crushing girls. So as far as the women's stuff goes on, those two, Macy Barber and Sabina Mazo are two girls to keep an eye on. They're certainly destined for the UFC.
Well, everybody loves head kicks, so you want to check them out on Access TV before they go over to the UFC. Pat, it's a great pleasure chatting to you guys. Don't forget to follow the man on Twitter and Instagram at Pat Miletich. You can, of course, hear Pat in the US every Friday night on Access TV, which is available in the US on most cable providers and streaming services such as Sling, DirecTV, Now, and Philo. And, of course, check out his podcast, The Conspiracy Farm, which, Pat, you obviously do a great job of. So thank you so much for chatting with us. It is always a pleasure speaking to a legend such as yourself.
Well, thank you, my Aussie friends.
Hey, this is Ariel Helwani, and you're listening to Submission Radio with my two favorite mates, Dennis and Casper.
Our next guest is the number 3 ranked welterweight, beating the super tough Demian Maia in his last fight. He's arguably one of the biggest standout fighters coming out of 2017, known for his ruthlessness in the cage and also the chaos he causes out of it. He is Colby "Chaos" Covington. Colby, welcome back to the program. How are you today? Because we know you've just finished with training.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm doing great, man. Just got done sharpening the tools, and thanks for having the new king of the welterweight division on the show.
It's good to have the king. It is absolutely our honor, and it's been a few months since we spoke to you, King. We obviously saw you briefly down here in Australia. What have you been up to since?
Not much, man. Just been training hard every day. I love perfecting my craft, and I love the process. I like to get better, and I enjoy the process of getting better. So I'm always getting better every time you see me out there, just like my career. My next fight's going to be my best fight.
We know you've been traveling around a bit. Sometimes you're doing Impact Wrestling tapings. Where are you joining us from right now? Are you in Florida? Or whereabouts are you in right now?
Yeah, I'm out in Miami, Florida right now doing some training. And, I've been doing some Impact tapings out in Canada. And then I'm also heading out to Rahway, New Jersey next weekend. And I'll be doing a show called Wrestle Pro and it'll be streamed live on Twitch. If you guys want to check it out, I'd check it out, man. The spectacle I'm bringing to that show next week is gonna be something.
Nice. I'm wondering, Colby, because obviously there's a lot of pro wrestling influence in you, and I imagine you were a big pro wrestling guy growing up. Did you have anyone that you looked up to? Any favorite pro wrestlers? I know me and Dennis, we were big fans of obviously Sting and guys like Stone Cold Steve Austin. Anyone that sort of, I guess, tickled your fancy that you looked up to?
Yeah, definitely. If you smell what's coming, that was my man growing up, The Rock.
Yeah.
And what will you be doing at the show, Kobe? Have you done any pro wrestling training yet? Are you looking to possibly even get in the ring and do some pro wrestling at the same time as fighting? Because your friend King Mo, he's done a bit of pro wrestling. There's a lot of guys like Bobby Lashley who are good pro wrestlers also fighting at the same time. Are you looking to get into the ring and actually have a few matches?
Yeah, that's definitely the plan, in the future. I got great coaches around me. A guy named John Hartnett, who doesn't get enough credit. That guy's, teaching me all the ins and outs of pro wrestling. And then another guy, Stevie Richards, So
yeah.
I have a great team around me. Obviously, Bobby Lashley and King Mo are they're some of the best in the world. So I see them every day at American Top Team. And then my manager, Dan Lambert, he's the best manager in the game for pro wrestling. The gimmick we're running, we're going to be better than Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar.
Was there ever a time, like I know a lot of wrestlers, they say that, well, if there was more money in MMA back in the day, we would have become MMA fighters. Was there ever a time where you considered, maybe when you were in college of going to pro wrestling instead of MMA? Were you ever at that crossroads?
Yeah, I was definitely at that crossroads. It was a tough decision, but luckily, my manager, Dan Lambert, he's the one that won me over and told me, after he seen me train MMA at American Top Team, he was like, hey, man, let's compete, man. You're going to be the best in the world. There's no one that can stop you. You're unstoppable in MMA, so let's go get that world title. And pro wrestling's always there. You can look to do that down the road. So, I just got to thank Dan Lambert for keeping me in this so I can be where I'm at now to be the best fighter in the world and bring that belt home.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously you are arguably one of the biggest emerging names to come out of 2017. You made a huge splash. Your stock is at an all-time high. As you entered the new year, because obviously we're still in January, did you sort of get a chance to look back and reflect on everything that you'd accomplished and your sort of new notoriety now?
No, I got a chip on my shoulder still. I'm not where I should be. If it wasn't for the fake champ Tai Tuivasa ducking me, I'd already have a belt around my waist. But he's too scared, and he's out here in Hollywood gossiping about the Kardashians. He's not ready to come back and defend the welterweight title. So, I can't look back until I get my belt. I'll look back on what's been accomplished after I get my belt. But in the meantime, I got my eyes on Tyron Woodley.
There's been some people that have been a little bit negative about your rise. Rory MacDonald said over the weekend that you're the low part of the MMA world and that it's a sad time at MMA because you're getting so much attention. Were you surprised that you caught his attention even though he was fighting for a title belt for another company? And what did you think about those comments?
No, I wasn't surprised. Rory MacDonald is just jealous of what I've accomplished in the UFC now. I'm the king of the mountain now. Everybody knows I'm number one target. People don't even think about Tyron Woodley because they know he's at the end of his career. They think about Colby Covington. That's the only name that's on everybody's mind is Colby Covington. They want to fight me because they know I'm the king now. So, Rory MacDonald, he's got those syrup-sipping lips over in Canada trying to talk big about the king, but, he needs to be quiet because, he got retired by old man Lawler. So, I don't want to have to completely finish off his career.
You mentioned before, Colby, that you're not where you should be, or you're not where you think you sort of belong at the moment. Do you feel like you get the credit you deserve for the names you've beaten? Especially recently beating guys like, say, Demian Maia, who obviously has a tremendous record at both 170 and 185. I feel like a lot of people talk about, Colby's loud, he says a lot of things, but do you think you get the credit for your actual accomplishments?
Not really. I've never gotten the credit my whole career. People have always overlooked me, this and that, but, I don't really care about the credit. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to march through this division like I have been doing. This is only the beginning. I can promise you that right here today, that I will be the champion by the end of 2018. But, the credit, I'm not out. I don't care about the credit. They can hate me. They can love me, but they want to see me fight. Everybody is invested now. So, it is what it is.
There were also rumors about you and Tyron Woodley possibly coaching The Ultimate Fighter. What exactly happened there? Because we thought you would have been a shoo-in for the program.
Yeah, I thought it was the perfect thing that was going to happen. The drama that's there, our history that we have in the gym at American Top Team, and this is a real beef. This is going to spice up the Ultimate Fighter and bring back a different element to the Ultimate Fighter that it's been missing the last couple of seasons. So, the UFC wanted to make it happen, but Diva Girl Woodley's over here crying about a little fake toe injury and a fake shoulder injury. So, it's just sad. It would have really been a great season, but he's out here scared in Hollywood. So, it's tough to make it happen.
And just to confirm, did they actually approach you about doing Tough? Was that an actual serious offer that was on the line that they spoke to you about wanting to do it?
Yeah, no, that was actually a serious thing. I don't ever spit fake news. I'm not like the fake media. So, when I say something, I speak truth. The UFC was trying to make it happen. They approached my manager about it, but obviously Tyron Woodley refused the offer. So, that's 2 times he's refused to fight me. If he starts doing it anymore, they're gonna talk about an interim title or stripping him. So, it's getting close to that line. He ducked me at UFC 219. The UFC wanted to make Tyron Woodley versus Colby Covington for the welterweight title on December 30th in Las Vegas, and then he ducked me for the Ultimate Fighter show. So, that's why he got the shoulder surgery to make it look good to the media and the UFC, like, oh, I got the shoulder surgery, so he's cleared of his name. Oh, it doesn't make me look bad that I turned down 2 fights, that I turned down a fight on December 30th versus Colby Covington, but I was good to fight Nate Diaz. So, the truth will speak for itself very soon.
Woodley was on Joe Rogan's MMA show recently, and it was clear that he is still very, very clearly bothered by negative comments from fans, and he believes that people disrespect him and don't give him the respect that he deserves. Why do you think he's so, I suppose, easily, not offended, but easily influenced, or the negative comments from fans affect him so much? What do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, I've always known that, it's an easy way to get under his skin. He's already defeated. He's already broken before I fought him. I don't even need to fight him. I've already beat him. So, he lets things get to emotions. He's he's literally a prima donna. That's the perfect explanation for Tyron Woodley. So, he's out here, he tries to race bait. People say that the people that don't like him and don't want to watch him fight or think he's boring, oh, they're racist. That's his only claim now. So, he's just, he's trapped. He's in a corner, and, he's defeated before anything. The fans have completely gotten his head, and, everybody's under his skin, and he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to handle the position he's in now, but it's okay because I'm going to take over his position as welterweight champ, and you will see the division be made great again.
It's sort of a funny contrast, you and him, because you're sort of on the opposite. You get a lot of feedback from everybody, and you're able to brush it off and not really care what anybody thinks. But you did mention the UFC wanted to make that fight, you and him, at UFC 219. So what happens now? Do you think that's the fight that they're going to make when Tyron is healthy to come back, and have that guaranteed that when he's healthy, you'll be the one fighting him? Because Dana White has said in the past that it's going to be RDA.
Yeah, there's no telling what's going to happen. Dana White said things in the past, and plans change. He even said that in an interview. So, plans can change, and, RDA is not set. They said he's supposed to fight Woodley, but, I don't know, man. Maybe I can steal the fight. Who wants to see RDA versus Woodley? Not a lot of people want to see it, dude. They're both getting over the hill. They're both ready to leave the sport. They got 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So, I don't think that fight's the fight to be made. I think the fight is me versus Tyron or me versus RDA. I got the beef with Brazil, and then, me and Tyron, we have a serious beef, man. I want to punch that dude in the face. He thinks he wants to punch me in the face because what I did to him when I broke him in the gym, but he don't really want to punch me in the face, because if I was such an easy fight like he claims I am, then he would come and fight me, but he's out here making up stories. So, we'll see what happens, man. Things can change, man. RDA, I don't know, man. He's been ducking me since Singapore, so, the UFC knows he's ducked me and he doesn't want to fight me, so we'll see what happens. Maybe things change.
Well, the other part of it is obviously, and you know this better than anyone, when you look at the UFC of today, it's all about sort of rivalries, who's the most marketable, what's the biggest fight that they can make, and obviously you've got that down packed, you work hard with the marketing, and not only that, you've also got a good streak, you've had good success at welterweight, and Woodley sort of, he's struggled to get the fans on his side. I feel like, he needs a good heel, and you're that perfect counter that. Are you surprised that they haven't been a bit more open, to the two of you fighting and just booking that fight already, especially given that, RDA's been at welterweight for a lot shorter time than you have?
Yeah, for sure. You know, Tyron Woodley, you know, he all these fans hate him. He wants to be a hero. He wants to be the good guy. All the fans are telling you, hey, I've literally had thousands of replies on Twitter that saying, Tyron, tagging me and Tyron and saying, Tyron, if you knock out Colby, I'll be your biggest fan, I promise. I'll support you for the rest of your career. Like, aren't you seeing that I'm your money fight? If you want to become a megastar, you have to come and fight me and beat me up. That's what you have to do to get to the next level. But he's not seeing that, man. He doesn't care about that. He's not in this for his legacy or to be the best welterweight fighter. He thinks he's looking for a money fight with GSP or Nate Diaz. Those guys aren't even fighting anymore. They're out of the picture. There's no money fight for Woodley. I mean, there's no money fight for him because he's not a draw anyways. He couldn't sell 100,000 pay-per-views. So, you know, Woodley, you know, it's either me or RDA, but, you know, he's got to fight someone. He's also saying that he doesn't want to fight RDA either, you know. So, you know, he's just two-faced, man. When he was number 4 in the world, he sat out for 2 years to wait for a title shot. Now I'm number 3 in the world. I'm clearly the next in line. RDA fought 3 fights at welterweight. Last year, RDA was getting knocked out by a lightweight Eddie Alvarez and getting beat up by Tony Ferguson. That never happened to me. No one's ever beat me up in my career. That dude doesn't deserve a shot at Tyron Woodley. He's fought 3 fights at welterweight. He was supposed to fight me at UFC Singapore, but he ducked me, and I got a tougher opponent in Dong Hum Kim, the number 7 guy in the world, and I completely ran through him. Another guy who Tyron Woodley fought, Dong Hum Kim. So, you know, RDA is not really deserving. I'm the next in line. I'm the bad guy. Let's do this, man. Let's sell this already. Tyron Woodley versus Colby Covington for the welterweight title.
And taking the title out of the picture, who do you think is the harder fight? If you have to look between RDA and Tyron Woodley, who do you think would give you the bigger challenge?
Dude, they're both pretty one-dimensional in the way they fight, the styles they fight. They're both pretty predictable, easy fights. You know, RDA's short. He's got no reach. He tries to wrestle in fights and put a pressure pace fight. That's going to be easy money for me. And then Tyron Woodley, all he's got is a right hand. You know, you just circle to the right, you put the pressure on him, fight him in the clinch. You know, he gets broken, you know, just like Rory MacDonald broke Tyron Woodley. He just pressure fought him. So, you know, they're both really easy matchups, and I'm just licking my chops right now, man. The future's so easy for me. I'm just at the beginning of my career. I'm still in my 20s. These guys are in their late 30s. I am the future of the UFC, and no one's going to stop me right now. Not even Pike will.
One of the other names that people are throwing around as a potential matchup for you while Tyron's out is Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I'm wondering, has the UFC tried to approach you to make that fight happen? And if so, what happened?
You know, they haven't approached me about that. I think I heard he was hurt from when he fought my boy Jorge Masvidal. So I don't know what's going on. I think he had a broken hand or something like that. But, you know, I don't know. We'll see what happens, man. He might be a fight that we fight, you know, International Fight Week or on the same. If they do make RDA versus Tyron, you know, I'm willing to fight Wonderboy on the same card. That's a perfect co-main event to them or whatever. And that's a pretty easy fight too, you know. Come on, karate, man. Come on, dude. Karate versus wrestling. You really think karate has a chance against wrestling? You guys must be smoking some crazy ass dope over there in Australia.
And of course, the final person that's kind of putting his hand up to fight you, because you do have a target on your back, is Kamaru Usman. He recently claimed that you were offered a fight against him at St. Louis but turned it down. Is that true? And do you see a potential chance of him being the next opponent for you?
That's fake news, and I've never heard of that guy in my life.
So just to clarify,
who the fuck is that? Who the fuck is this guy? Like, I'm on the top of the mountain. I'm looking at the top of the mountain. Whoever's at the top of the mountain with me, I'll kick those guys off. I've never even heard of that guy. I've never been offered a fight with that guy.
Well, I guess the other question, because he was saying that apparently they offered the fight to you 3 times, and his story is that you guys were supposed to be the main event in St. Louis. But just to clarify, that never happened. You were never offered a contract, nothing.
No, that never happened. That's complete false, fake news. So I don't know why he's trying to say this shit. He had a fight booked with a guy, and he's saying that they were offering a fight with me. I mean, the guy's stories just don't add up, and he's making himself look really dumb right now.
He's even suggested that you and him do a season of The Ultimate Fighter. I guess from a rankings perspective, he's ranked 9th, you're ranked 3. Do you think he's earned a fight against you?
Fuck no, man. He hasn't even been a ranked guy yet. Who the fuck is that, man? I just beat number 3 and number 7, and those guys were clearing out the division and on long win streaks. And you know, me and the guy I just beat just fought for the champion, you know. So we have the champion and I have the same resume and the same last opponent, common opponent. So, you know, I don't even know who that guy is, man. But, you know, I'm looking up. I'm not looking back.
Mm. And speaking of the title fight, some people have a conspiracy theory that the splash that you made down here in Australia with the whole Boomerang incident sort of affected your chances of getting the next title shot. Just talk to us a little bit about, did you end up speaking to Dana White about it? Was there much backlash over it? And what's your relationship with Dana White now after that whole incident?
Yeah, my relationship with Dana, it is what it is. He understands what I'm doing. He appreciates me. He knows I'm drawing more fans and more eyes to this. I mean, look at it. Just like that Boomerang incident, I drew all the media, all the news to that UFC Australia show. So I pretty much sold their show. So, I did them a favor, man. So, they appreciate what I'm doing. They understand it. So, what can I do? Look at the situation, man. I mean, a guy's coming up and attacking me because of my freedom of speech. He's attacking me because some words I said in Brazil when I beat the Brazilian best welterweight fighter in the history, and I beat him in his hometown, Demian Maia, in his hometown of Sao Paulo. And I said some comments that I felt were necessary for the way they treated me when I was out there. But they can dish it, but they can't take it back. And then everybody wants to act like this Boomerang incident, like, I don't even care about the Boomerang. I think it's funny, dude. I think I might make some shirts and sell them to all the people around the world, with a Boomerang on. What do you think?
I think, it's funny. We were on a radio station talking about that incident. That's all they wanted to talk about. So you're not wrong that was probably the biggest thing that happened all week. And I think as far as the T-shirts, I think the Aussie fans would go nuts about it. The only thing was we were disappointed because then they sent you home and we didn't get to see you at Media Day. The fans didn't get to see you at the Q&A. So I feel like you need redemption. You need to come down to Australia, come back, maybe do some seminars, maybe come down, I don't know, for another fan Q&A. But as we let you go soon, Colby, what's I guess the timeline or the time frame that you have in your mind? I know you're obviously training. You've got a new Muay Thai coach, it seems, so you're sharpening up your skills. But you're kind of in the situation where you don't really know what's next, and neither does anyone else. When would you like to fight again? What's an ideal time frame? Or are you happy to wait out if it means you'll get the next title shot?
Yeah, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait out and see how the title picture is sorted out. There's some things that have been said, but things change all the time. Like I said earlier, plans change. So I'm gonna wait out. I'm gonna see how the welterweight title picture plays out. I'm pretty busy down here right now. I just bought a house in Fort Lauderdale, so I'm busy doing that. And I'm training, with a new coach. This guy Greg. He's a Muay Thai world champion. He's a beast, man. He's down here in Miami, Florida. So I'm out in Miami Beach, and I'm just gonna keep training and perfecting my craft, and whenever the UFC gives me the call for the fight that I've earned, then I will be ready.
Well, it's good to hear that you've obviously got some things on your plate. You got the new house, so congratulations. And just finally, as we let you go, even though we hear a lot from you, you're still kind of a bit of a mystery. No one really knows sort of who the real Colby Covington is. What are some of the things that obviously you're going to have a bit of downtime? What do you do in your spare time? You finish up training, you have a hard session, you're in the gym practicing. What do you do? What do you like to do when you're out of the gym just to sort of kill some time and enjoy your life?
Yeah, I'm a big movie buff. I love going to the theaters and catching a good movie. You can see me at the movie theaters a couple times a week. And,
you saw Star Wars, and then you got some death threats, didn't you, Colby?
No, I never saw Star Wars. I went and got the spoilers off of Reddit, so I never even seen Star Wars. I just wanted to get the spoilers and just piss some people off, some nerds off. This is Nerd Bash 2018. I got to piss off all these nerds and virgins.
I remember going on Twitter, and that was literally the first tweet I saw, and it was like Luke Skywalker. I was like, well, fuck it. Now I know what happens in the movie, and just but it didn't ruin it for me. I'm not that much into Star Wars. Just quickly as we let you go, what's a Colby Covington recommendation for all the fans listening right now? What's a movie that you saw recently that you thought, you know what, that's a slice of nice. That was a good movie.
Oh man, it's tough. Wow.
Did you see Bright on Netflix by any chance?
No, I don't catch much Netflix. You know what I do a lot? I actually have another little passion. I like to play Texas Hold'em poker. So I go to the casino a lot, and I go to Hard Rock, and I'll play these poker tournaments where they're couple $100 buy-in, and first place will be $100,000 or something like that. So
wow.
I really enjoy poker on my downtime. I play a lot of poker.
Nice. Have you ever won big, or is it something sort of you still adding the skills and you're sort of working your way up to that?
Yeah, I mean, I've I have a good resume. I have won like, a couple hundred G's, through my life, like a lot of like $10,000 scores per tournament, so, I played a lot. I've been playing for like 10, 15 years now. So
wow,
I got a lot of experience in it. And I play a lot of cash games. So, I do pretty well. I do decent. I win more than I lose, which is what you want to do with your money. If it's going up and it's not going down, that's all that matters.
Well, you might catch him in a movie theater or at the poker table, and most likely in a big matchup next in the octagon. Colby Covington, thank you so much for coming onto the program. Guys, make sure to follow him on Twitter. He has a can't-miss Twitter profile at Colby Cov MMA. Of course, he puts up a lot of really entertaining stuff. Thank you for joining us, Colby. Best of luck. We look forward to finding out what next matchup you get. Thank you.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me on Submission Radio, and hopefully I get out to Australia one of these days and we get to kick it.
Hey, this is Tony Okagui Ferguson, and you guys listen to Submission Radio. Keep tuning in, guys.
All right, guys. Our next guest is a special man. You know him from his many appearances from Submission Radio last year throughout 2017. You know him from the big FIFA Challenge, the Media FIFA Challenge, which, of course, he lost the first one, but he's still a winner in our hearts. He's one of the sexiest men on the other side of the world. Of course, Severe MMA, one of the greatest shows out there as well. He has great content on Sherdog.com. I feel like I'm doing a Hall of Fame speech here, Sean. Feel free to stop me when you'd like. What else? He likes long walks in the park right now. It's apparently really cold, and he looks like a Sith, and he joins us here on the program, the Dark Lord of MMA, Sean Sheehan. Welcome to Submission Radio. It's great to have you, man.
Thanks. It's my glorious return. I really should have the Bobby Roode glorious music just playing in my intro here. It's been a while now, but I'm back to take over Sheehan Submission Radio as the fans have been calling it, I believe. So
yeah,
we've been losing a lot of sponsorship deals over your stupid first name, Sean. No, I'm kidding. We had no sponsorship deals to begin with. Great to have you on the program.
Thanks, lads.
Set the scene for us just quickly before we talk Stipe versus Francis. It's a pretty cool 10 a.m. here in Australia, in Melbourne. What's the weather like in Ireland right now?
Yeah, it's 11 p.m. here. It's really cold. It wasn't actually cold all day, but it's been cold for the last month, maybe really freezing cold all the time. And there's a storm outside. There's like I don't know, is it a red weather warning or something? So there was a bit of a storm last night as well. The electricity went for an hour, so I could get cut off in the mid-clear as well, but hopefully we'll be okay. But yeah, it's blustery now and cold and just normal Irish weather, really.
When you have enough, when you don't want to talk anymore, you can just pull the plug from your computer and then blame it on a storm, basically.
I'll just throw it out the window.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought Rory MacDonald was in town or something when you said red weather warning, just destroying people's internets with the shin. But anyway, let's talk about UFC 220 and all the stuff that's sort of happening in the world of MMA, because it's great to have you on the program, Sean, and there's stuff to digest. There's some digestion happening. We went to the MMA buffet and we've got a couple of plates full of discussion happening here. The first thing we want to talk about is Stipe Miletich versus Francis Ngannou. It was a fight that a lot of people were really, really excited about. Some things were exposed. There's a lot of stuff to go through here, but the first thing that I want is to get your thoughts on Stipe's win over Ngannou, because for me personally, I know a lot of people that were sort of skeptical of Stipe. They believed, he should have finished him, he should have done this, he should have done that. I thought it was a really great performance by the champ. What did you think, Sean?
Yeah, I thought it was a brilliant performance as well. I thought it was really, really intelligent the way he did it. A lot of people, I think, have been talking about how Stipe won it by wrestling and him and exposing the wrestling deficiencies and the BJJ deficiencies in his game. But I actually think it was the striking which won for Stipe. Like, Francis did a great job of stopping most of the takedowns in the first round and a half, maybe not round and a half, but first round anyway, apart from laid on. And Stipe still stayed in there. He did get caught maybe 2-3 times, but he didn't get caught clean. Even that the shot that him in the eye was kind of a grazing shot. It's just Francis hit so hard, but he won most of the exchanges on the feet. He was hurting Francis. He almost finished him with like 10 seconds left in the round. He had him hurt badly, and I think it was just a phenomenal display for Stipe. After that, then he knew he was still dangerous, and he was just cutting him down with leg kicks, pulling him down against the fence, holding their lane on top of him. If there was a touch of Francis kind of he knew what was happening, and it was that he'd no quit in him. He didn't want to give up, but he knew the fight was getting away from him as well, and it was just getting tired, and he was trying to rest and try to getting a bit of his power back and stuff, but it didn't really work. And I think it was intelligent by Stipe, because Francis only needed one opportunity. And he was dangerous throughout. And I think it's intelligent of Stipe to keep doing. Like, you saw how fired up he was afterwards. And like for someone like Stipe going in there with maybe a lot of people, including me, and a lot of people picking against him, and then a lot of people maybe like Dana White, maybe like the UFC, wanting him to actually lose. I think it's okay to go in there and get that win at all costs like he did, and I thought it was a phenomenal, intelligent display by Stipe.
Yeah, for sure. I think, some people obviously criticize Stipe towards the end, saying that he should have finished him. I think that would have been very, very foolish. And it's something that I wish I said earlier, but that's always been Stipe's thing. Like, he's always said, like, I don't, you ask him for a prediction. It's not that he's doesn't really want to talk about it. It's that he generally doesn't care. It's just, as long as I win, as long as I get my hand raised. And the fact that he has been finishing people in the first round is just kind of, I think, a bonus. I don't think it's really what he's going in there to try to do. As long as if he won all his fights like that, I don't think he would have any issue with it. I like the change in dynamic also. Obviously, seeing Ngannou being ultra aggressive and extremely dangerous looking in the first round, and a couple of rounds later, and he looked somewhat lost in there. And there were some brilliant moments where Stipe and Ngannou were sort of circling each other, and Ngannou was waiting for Stipe to commit to something, and so that he could try and counter, and Stipe would just hit him with a leg kick and then circle out, and you could just see the frustration and also confusion on Ngannou's face. But I guess just looking forward to what's next for Ngannou, not in terms of opponents, but the improvements. Obviously, cardio is a real tricky one. I think George St. Pierre was the one who said a long time ago where, as athletes, as fighters, everybody's sort of already at their peak cardio. Everyone's already putting in the training and cardio. It's not really about that. It's more about pacing. And I think with Ngannou, Pat Miletich was saying to us earlier where he doesn't have a lot of technique in his strikes, and he throws literally everything into every single strike. Do you think this is something that will plague him in the future, if he doesn't KO his opponents in the second rounds? Because if he is really going to improve his longevity and his cardio, it kind of seems like he's going to have to change a lot about his game, even some of the main components. What do you think, Sean?
See, there's a very, very, there's a tightrope here which you need to walk, because you want Francis Ngannou to be that explosive first round knockout artist, and if he stops being that, he won't be as special as what he was. Because of, in MMA, there's a tendency to write guys off because of one loss or one bad performance or whatever. But he needs to walk that tightrope. He went too far against Stipe. He said afterwards straight away that he underestimated him, and he definitely did. He went out just swinging for the fences. He wasn't like that before. He was more intelligent. That's the reason why I picked him to win the fight, was because of what he did to Alistair Overeem. He was really intelligent, took his time, won that fight. He waited for Alistair to come, moved his head, countered, and knocked him out. It was brilliant. I thought I disagree a little bit. I think his technique is improving. It's good, but it didn't look that way on Saturday night because he just waded in too much. Maybe the occasion got him, something like that. Look, there's deficiencies in his game, 100%. But I think it's his game planning is the biggest problem. If he game planned a little bit better, I don't think he would have crashed so hard so early. Maybe it would have happened after the third round, but the way he fought in that first round was just, it was a foolhardy. It was something someone very green does, and I think the camp as well. His trainers who, I think they've done a good job with him, but I think he might be at the stage now where he moves on. You mentioned George St. Pierre there. I think TriStar would be perfect for him. I know they don't have that many heavyweights and stuff, but I think they could bring in guys. I think it's the tutelage of Firas Zahabi, putting everything together with the language as well. All those lads obviously above there speaking French. I think it'd be a perfect fit. But I still think Francis will be a champion in the future. You can see, 4 years, you can see his ability, his physical ability as well. That's as important as anything, I think, to be honest. But it was a very green display, not a brilliant display. But take nothing away from Stipe, he went out there and won that fight as well.
And I know that when we were trying to get Francis on the show, he texted me and said he was struggling to get his camp together at one point, and the turnaround was a bit quick for him. I think also the moment got to him a little bit. It was all a little bit too quick for him, I think. So that all mixed in with him, not really taking Stipe as seriously as he should have, and not the right game plan. I'm wondering what we see him like next. Sean, the other thing that I was curious about the whole thing was after the fight, Stipe taking the belt off Dana White and having his coach put it on him, saying that's because his coach respects him. What did you read into that situation?
It's a tough one because you see where Stipe is coming from. Like, imagine if you were the champion and someone's coming in and basically in there to take your belt. That's the kind of the position that Francis was given. He was given all that big push. Dana White was coming out saying he's the next big thing. I was saying it. I'm not going to lie. Most people, I think a lot of people were saying it, Francis. And I don't think anyone meant it out of disrespect to Stipe, because I think everyone respects Stipe, thinks he's a very good fighter. I think everyone thought Francis is a very good fighter as well. But when you're in Stipe's position, how could you not take that as disrespect? You have to. It's very understandable from his situation, and you can understand it. But with Dana, I think there's been a lot of tension there for the last maybe year or a little bit longer. He doesn't feel like he gets the respect he deserves, not only in the way they promote him, but also in his contract situation and everything like that, being the heavyweight champion of the world. Now, I think the UFC have oddly actually done a pretty good job of promoting promoting Stipe. You've seen them bringing the firefighters to the open workout. He was in the parade in Cleveland with the basketball team who won the national championships and stuff like that. I think they've generally done a good job, but there's a tendency as well to maybe overreact a little bit on Stipe's point. Now, there's with the whole money thing and with Francis, you can understand that, but you've seen Tyron Woodley doing it an awful lot over the last year or so, saying why are they not promoting me properly when they're doing things to promote him. But these fighters as well, it's tough to go into a huge fight. He's fighting an absolute monster, the scariest guy. He even said it afterwards, I'm the baddest man on the planet, even though I'm not the scariest. And, that's the tension going into fight someone like Francis Ngannou is huge. And, the relief kind of maybe just spilt out over a little bit after with Stipe. And it was still there in the press conference afterwards. But, yeah, it's going forward, it's interesting to see whether that's something that keeps playing out or if it's something that maybe won't. If Cain Velasquez comes in there and fights him, which side are the UFC going to take? Are they going to push this as Cain's redemption? He's going to come back and take the title, or are they going to push it Stipe to become the greatest of all time? They could do both as well, but it's interesting to see how it plays out.
I'm not saying that Stipe's next pay-per-view is going to do 1 million buys or anything, but to me, it just kind of felt like Stipe's coming out party in a big way, because this fight got such a big push because there was so much promotion. And sure, I think Stipe got a lot of promotion in this one, to be honest. I feel like the trailer of the first half was very much centered around him. I think it was very equal. Sometimes you see trailers and it's just really like Amanda Nunes, Ronda Rousey. Like Nunes wasn't even featured in that one. You can't compare this one to that. I don't know, just even afterwards, he was kind of a bit more pissed off. He had a chip on his shoulder. I think people really like a lot of people who have chips on their shoulder. He was a bit more, his personality came out a little bit more on the post-fight presser. And, now he's changed his Twitter bio to saying that not only is he the baddest man on the planet, that he's the greatest of all time, which, like, we've had him on the show many, many times. We've seen many, many interviews, and, any time, like, I remember, I think the last 3 interviews, we've always asked him about respect. Do you care about the respect you get? And it's always the same thing. I don't give a rat's ass. I don't care about respect. All right, fair enough. And then we ask, where do you stand as far as the greatest heavyweights and stuff like that? I don't really care about that. So
that's the problem as well. Stipe, he never says anything, and it's gas that guys like him are coming out saying, I don't get promoted. So, you have to promote yourself a little bit as well. And I think that's a huge issue with him as well.
It's funny because I feel almost like it's frustration where he feels like people haven't given him the respect he deserves, so now he's just going to say it and say, like, you know what, I am the best. I am the fucking baddest man on the planet. I am the GOAT. But it's also kind of like, well, that's also what you've needed to do this whole time. So I don't know. I just feel like people have gotten more behind Stipe, and I think if he can be that guy that keeps racking up the record, I'm not saying he'll be like the next Fedor, but he might have that quality where people go, shit, who can beat him? And at the moment, it seems like maybe it's Cain Velasquez. Who would you like to see, Sean, as Stipe's next logical opponent? Because a lot of people are saying him and Cain would be great, but Cain probably needs a tune-up fight. Where do you stand on that one?
Yeah, I definitely think Cain needs a fight, but I think there's two options here. You either get Cain a fight and try to get him a fight. I believe he's back in the gym now for the last few weeks. Try to get him a fight in a couple of months' time. An easier someone like a Volkov maybe, or
what about
Tybura
or Verdum? Or do you think that's a bit too much?
Yeah, I think you've such a shortfall of contenders there. If you put the two of them together, it's going to be tough. Even though Stipe has already beaten Verdum, it's going to be tough to keep producing guys like that at the top of the division. So yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that fight. I actually think maybe 6 months ago it would have made sense when Cain was coming back, but he's kind of just been out for so long now that it's tough to know what's coming next for him. But for Stipe, I think, and we're obviously going to get to Daniel Cormier. I think the Cormier fight makes sense now. Gustafsson, I'm not sure how ready Gustafsson is yet. I believe he had an operation there not too long ago. So maybe it would be good timing to get this super fight going. Let Gustafsson come back, get fit. Let Cain come back and get fit, maybe get a fight, and have this fight in the interim. And, it's a big, massive super fight, and I think it'd be insane, And it's not like a lot of these fights where you someone maybe gone up in weight and taking on the bigger challenger. Daniel Cormier is a heavyweight. Realistically, we see how hard it is for him to get to 205, and I don't think there'd be much of a, Daniel Cormier is a relatively small guy, but he's big. He is a heavyweight fighter, and I think it'd make sense. This fight, it's an absolutely fantastic fight.
And speaking of a bit of star power in the division, I mean, Dana White was recently asked, I suppose, the odds at Brock Lesnar returning in 2018, and he said yes at plus 500 that Brock Lesnar will return. I mean, what do you make of that? Do you actually believe Brock Lesnar would come back this year? And also, who do you think would make sense for him as an opponent? Do you think maybe with DC saying he might retire in 2019 and him being such a big wrestling fan, a DC Brock Lesnar match might be something fun they could put together, or something along those lines, where it's not really for a title, but more of a spectacle.
Before you jump in, Sean, I'm just going to say, while we're talking about star power, I know it doesn't make sense at all in terms of titles, like Lesnar coming back from the disgrace, failed drug test and getting a title shot would be ridiculous, but him versus Stipe, I think would be great for Stipe, because, I mean, he would probably destroy Brock Lesnar really, really badly. And obviously Brock Lesnar would bring in a lot of star power, a lot of fans, a lot of eyes, and it would just be almost like a layup for Stipe. And it would just be, a great name on his record and just more exposure for him. And also
Brock Lesnar takes any fight. That's the thing about Brock Lesnar that people don't really... A lot of people give Brock Lesnar criticism, but look at him. He took that Alistair Overeem fight back when Alistair Overeem looked like an absolute monster. Came back to fight Mark Hunt when we all knew he had issues with striking, fought Cain Velasquez. The guy would be, I feel like if the money's right, the guy would be open to fight anyone.
I'm surprised he hasn't fought yet, to be honest. I thought he'd be back by now, but he's definitely coming back. Brock is a competitor. His WWE contract probably doesn't have much left in it, and even if it doesn't, I think they had no problem with him fighting before. The UFC and the WWE have a pretty good relationship going. Ronda Rousey looks like she's going to be in the Royal Rumble next week, or definitely at WrestleMania anyway. So I think there's a good relationship there. He will be back. The only problem is he needs to put in, I think he's 6 months left in his suspension, and he has to sign up for USADA and do the 6 months. So they're going to have to announce this 6 months out if it's going to happen. So that is an issue as well. Can you rely on Cain Velasquez to get there in 6 months? I don't think that's something that's realistically going to happen. The title shot, I could see it happening. His performance against Mark Hunt, I know he was on drugs, but his performance against Mark Hunt was pretty good. Would Stipe wanted Stipe as the sort of guy now? I think that he's calling himself the baddest man on the planet, calling himself the greatest of all time. Would he want to test himself against someone like Brock Lesnar? We were talking about Cain there. Maybe Cain needs another fight. Would he rather Brock, or would he rather a Verdum rematch, or Mark Hunt if he wins this week, or Derek Lewis? It's going to be a tough sell for any of those guys if Brock Lesnar's on the table. So, yeah, Brock will be back. maybe the end of this year, maybe next year, but yeah, it's only a matter of time.
And you'd be stupid not to take that fight, because I know it's obviously really sad what happened with Mark Hunt with the whole PED thing, but Mark Hunt getting that fight, if he would have, and make no mistake about it, I mean, taking PEDs is wrong and Brock Lesnar was cheating on the night, but if he would have beaten Brock Lesnar in that fight, he would have been a massive name the next day, much bigger overnight, a much bigger name than he was before. I mean, the WWE fans would know him, people around the world would know him. If he put Brock Lesnar on his highlight reel, no doubt about it, that would have added huge star power and money to his contract. So if you're Stipe, to me, if you're anybody and they put Brock Lesnar in front of you, I feel like you take that fight. That's a rare opportunity in the heavyweight division that we have right now, especially against a guy who what his weaknesses are. And also, Brock Lesnar isn't young anymore. He's like late 30s, isn't he? Close to 40 soon. So this is a great deal, whoever gets this contract.
I don't think it's a layup that much, to be honest. I think Brock is a competitor. Like Brock's a front runner as well. If Stipe comes out and absolutely mauls him for the first 2 or 3 rounds, he's definitely taking that fight off Brock. Like, Brock has shown that he can come back from adversity, but I don't think he's shown that against anyone as good as Stipe. But if Brock Lesnar gets that front foot early, if he gets a couple of takedowns, he's an absolute behemoth of a man, much bigger than Stipe, much stronger than Stipe, very, very good at wrestling. People tend to forget sometimes that he was, a Division 1 national champion, I believe, wrestler, and he is no joke, and I think that'd be a good fight, to be honest. I'd love to see it, but I definitely pick Stipe, all right, but I don't think Brock is a layup.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think if Brock does, or if and when Brock does come back, all roads point to him getting an eventual title shot, whether it's in his first fight or his second fight. Maybe they'll give him a layup, and then he'll beat someone and then earn a title shot. But the marketing would be hilarious, like if he does get an immediate title shot. It'd be like, Dana White would be saying, he beat Mark Hunt. Mark Hunt's so tough and he beat him. He absolutely deserves a title shot. And then you're going to get like Brett Okamoto and be like, Dana over here at the press conference, like, what about all the cheating? What about all the disgrace? Dana,
next question.
It'll be like UFC 220. He'll be like, what did you just get here? We covered that 5 minutes ago. And Brett will be like, yeah, but you didn't really say anything about it. He'll be like, listen, all right, dog with a fluffy tail. Next question. That's goof. Yeah,
he'll be like Gil from The Simpsons. Dana White really needs this one. Oh, hey, did I put him on? No. It's one of those situations, but you almost, it would be a ridiculous situation. And from a media perspective, it's like, this is pretty crazy. But at the same time, if you're media and if you're fans, you're like, there's nothing, like, there's no big fights. Conor McGregor, who knows when he's going to be back. Ronda Rousey, she's probably in the WWE. The UFC are really struggling to put these cards together. Look at UFC 221. Look at the undercard of UFC 220. So if you get a big fight, as ridiculous as it is, compared to back in the day where you actually had really good fights you could put together, here there's always the argument of, hey, well, it's kind of like all we have left right now. This is like the biggest fight you guys can have. If you guys want a big fight, this is it. There's no real other options. So I think that maybe can be a bit of an argument that he uses. The fact that, look, we ran out of options. We have nothing huge. All your fans are complaining about the fact that, there's no one for Stipe to fight. Maybe Cain Velasquez hasn't come back yet, and he's taken another break for a bit after his return fight. There's nothing left. You guys want a big fight for like a mid-year card or one of your big cards. This is it. I'm doing it for the fans. Kind of make it seem like he's doing it for the fans, and the fans asked for it, and that's why he's doing it. Kind of play it off like that. And for a lot of media, although they'll be complaining about it, hey, that's clicks to their website rather than if it was like, Shevchenko versus Stipe Miletich, which would be a fight that Shevchenko would win.
I'd watch it.
Yeah, she would win that fight. But you know what I'm talking about. Deep down inside, MMA media would be booking their flight for that event.
Yeah.
It's tough when you're concerned with someone like Brock Lesnar. It's a little bit like John Jones as well, because you see how good they are and everything like that, but then there is this whole PED thing hanging over them, and it's something that we struggle with in MMA a little bit, because we want to see these great fighters fighting because we don't have that many of them, and it's just the PED thing is hanging over him. But with Stipe as well, just the final thing on that, I think, because he has basically cleaned out that division already, even though it's funny to say with 3 title shots, apart from Kane, who else is there really? I named out a couple of guys there. It's going to be tough. That's why Brock comes into the conversation.
Curtis
That's why
Blades,
Daniel Cormier
beats Mark Hunt. Curtis Blades, Stipe Miletich.
See, like that's a joke, but that's actually realistic. Like that could happen. You know, so he's in a tough situation there, and because that heavyweight division is just so, you know, so many guys beat each other so often. You know, it's hard to get a run together, and you know he's beaten a lot of those guys already. So yeah, it's a weird situation.
Well, moving on to DC's win at UFC 220, just before we talk about his performance and get your thoughts on that, Sean, do you think him giving this retirement date kind of, I suppose, helps him in a possible Stipe fight? Because now he goes, okay, I'm going to be retiring on this date. I'm kind of looking for big fights. I won't be around for long, you know, and Kane's coming back, but I won't be, you know, sort of taking up space in his division for long. Do you think it kind of gives him a stronger case to possibly do this Stipe fight?
I think it does, despite the fact that he definitely won't retire. Like, this is just not going to happen. Nobody in MMA retires. He'll still be fighting in 2 years or whatever. But yeah, it does, I think, because if he goes into that fight, if it does happen, and he says, this is my one fight at heavyweight, win or lose, I'm going back defending my light heavyweight title. I think that could happen, you know, and that's very possible. We you know, we've mentioned it a couple of times that Kane needs a fight. If Kane goes in and gets maybe on the same card in a co-main event or something and wins that fight, you know, whether win or lose, I think Kane versus Stipe after that is a good fight that you can still make. Having said that, you know, a lot of this, and it's funny, we put up a video on the Severe MMA YouTube account about this today. The stench of John Jones is still there, and it's always going to be around Daniel Cormier. And this depends, you know, if John Jones goes in there and, you know, they find Turinabol in his chicken fillets or something, you know, is he only going to get a 6-month ban? Is something like that going to happen? Or, you know, is he going to be out for 2 years? Is he going to be out for 4 years? You know, if John Jones gets a 4-year ban, I think the likelihood of Stipe versus Cormier happening is increased. If John Jones only gets 6 months or he gets a year or something, which, you know, he probably has most of already done, I think the likelihood of John Jones versus Daniel Cormier increases an awful lot. So it's unfortunate for DC, you know, he got his redemption and everything, but John Jones, the shadow still looms over him.
Yeah, it's interesting. I got to say, also with DC, you know, the guys, it seems like he's passing up opportunities at heavyweight. Obviously, you know, Brock, Stipe, we don't know if those fights will happen, but every time anybody asks him, he really shuts down that, you know, possibility of going up to heavyweight. And it seems like he's really only doing it because of his good friend Cain Velasquez. I mean, what a guy, obviously looking out for him and sort of seeing if he can help his friend, you know, make the money. And I guess he feels kind of indebted. So I think that kind of speaks to Cormier's character. But just kind of on that John Jones thing, Dana White, while he was doing predictions and betting odds, he did predict, I think he gave like a plus 180 betting odds that John Jones fights again in 2018. So I'm curious what he knows that, you know, that we don't. Do you think DC should aim to finish his career if, let's say hypothetically, he is retiring in March 2019, finish his career on a John Jones win? Because I almost think like he can't really avoid that fight, right? If, let's say John Jones comes back in 2018 and Daniel Cormier is still champion, surely they're going to make that rematch. Or maybe they'll give John Jones a tune-up fight, but at some point he's going to have to fight John Jones again, right?
Yeah, well, what Dana White saw that we didn't see is obviously the results of that lie detector. So, you know, there's that.
Yeah. Yep.
That was hilarious. God, that was hilarious.
That was so stupid. It was like, here's a lie detector. We haven't seen anything, but like sources are telling us that he did it and sources are telling us that he passed. So, you know, take a lot of stock with that.
How stupid do you have to be? You're just making yourself look worse. Like, even, you know, whether he did take it or not doesn't make a difference. This is all just terrible PR, and it was really weird. What were they thinking? It's like, oh, we'll do a lie detector. Everyone's going to believe us. After I was like, are you idiot? Are you even more of an idiot than we already know?
You might as well put a press release saying John Jones pinky promises that he didn't take steroids. Would have had the same effect.
John Jones works with George Costanza to pass lie detector tests.
Yeah.
It's not a lie if you believe it.
For DC though, he needs the John Jones fight, but does he want it really? You know, he does want it, but like it's not going to end well for him. John Jones doesn't need a warm-up fight. I think he goes into that fight and beats DC again. He's just a better fighter than him. Let's be honest about it here. Daniel Cormier is a great fighter, and he's the best clean, fair 205-pounder in the world by a mile. But John Jones is a better fighter than Daniel Cormier, and if they fought 20 times, he'd probably win 19 at least. I think he's just a superior fighter than him, and that's the sad thing for Cormier. And look, maybe the best thing that could happen to Cormier was if John Jones got a 4-year ban and was gone, and it gave him a chance to go in there and maybe spin off 3 or 4 title defenses and, you know, put himself up there and get people saying like Daniel Cormier is the best. And that's never going to happen, to be honest. But it could make him look a little bit different if he could retire on 3 or 4 big wins in a row with John Jones out of the picture. I think that's probably the best way I can in for him. Now, obviously, the best way I can in for him is John Jones coming back and him beating John Jones, but I don't think that's realistic, to be honest.
And one of the things I was thinking about was, even if he does retire because John Jones, for example, gets banned for a while, I definitely see a scenario where if John Jones returns, becomes champion, and sort of cleans out the division some more, they get into some kind of argument over some kind of broadcasting interview, and then he ends up fighting him eventually anyway for maybe one last paycheck when he's like 41 or something. So eventually all roads, I feel like, lead to John Jones. But apart from that, people definitely have a lot more, I suppose. He's definitely got a lot more supporters after his fight UFC 220. People really appreciated him taking this fight with Volkan in the co-main event. And I think a lot of people were impressed with his win. And a lot of people sort of came around on Daniel Cormier. I suppose a lot of people that were saying, he's not a true champion, really appreciated the fact that he went out there, fought for the belt, and won in the way that he did. Do you feel like after that performance, there is a bit more support for Daniel Cormier? And just on that performance, what did you think of it, Sean?
Yeah, I think there is a little bit more support, but it's all kind of the casual fan support, and it's kind of people who are maybe not people that were haters of his, but people that were kind of, you know, we know that John Jones is a better fighter, and now we're saying, John Jones is out of the picture. How, we need to appreciate Daniel Cormier more. Maybe I'd even put myself into that category. So I think there's definitely a little bit more appreciation, but not anything huge or anything that's going to make him a star or anything like that. On the performance, I thought it was an exciting, good performance. I think Daniel Cormier is an underestimated, violent kind of fighter. You know, he's a guy that will go in there and he'll take damage to get the win, and maybe when you're looking back at his fights, you think, Anderson Silva, and he kind of laid on top of him for a while, but that's kind of an outlier. I think a lot of his fights, he does it. He gets the couple of John Jones fights, I know he lost them, but this fight at the weekend, the Alexander Gustafsson fight, all tremendous fights where, he goes in there and he takes his damage to get inside and take guys down. That's kind of a feature of AKA. We see it with Khabib as well. He goes balls out head first to get the takedown. Same with Cain Velasquez, same with Luke Rockhold. It's cost all of those guys, apart from Khabib, but I suppose it's cost Khabib maybe a couple of years of his career. But I think it was a phenomenal display. He showed his ability on the ground, but a little bit like Stipe as well. He showed his ability on the feet. I think at the end of that first round, he caught Volkan a few times very well and hurt him. Then in the second round, he got one of the most pretty takedowns I've ever seen, where he lifted that leg up, ran the pipe, pulled his other leg out from under him with the back of his heel, put him on the ground, got the crucifix, held his shin across Volkan's arm and just absolutely battered him from on top, and got the Ryan Nelson and Kimbo Slice style finish. What else can you say? It was maybe a perfect display from Daniel Cormier. Put on an exciting fight, could be a round of the year contender. I thought it was a really, really good round, even though Volkan was maybe winning early, but Cormier came back in it and then came out, saw his advantage and destroyed Volkan and won it in the second.
I was impressed with Volkan for the first few seconds of the first round, where he was just shrugging Daniel Cormier off. I thought, he might have something for him, but then turns out he didn't. And Daniel Cormier, really a true champion, to sort of turn things around like that. But you mentioned Khabib. It's obviously getting late in Ireland, so we'll let you go, Sean. Before we do, just last topic we have to cover, absolutely have to, and that is obviously Tony Ferguson versus Khabib, being finally announced for UFC 223. A bit of a shit show over the weekend. And of course, the shit show that I'm referring to, not UFC 220, that was all peachy, but this press conference for UFC 223 is the big press conference. They finally announced the fight, and then they don't really clarify what belt the fighters are fighting for. Dana White not wanting to say that Conor McGregor has been stripped at the press conference, and then he spoke to TSN and he said that McGregor is the champion for now, but he will be stripped if he doesn't commit by the time Khabib and Tony fight. which I don't really understand, because if you're making this fight, you need to know already what's going on. Is he stripped? And if he's not stripped, why is he not stripped? What belt are these guys fighting for? And I mentioned Brett Okamoto before, and the reason why is it really pissed me off and angered me watching that press conference when, obviously Dana White was very non-committal about that whole, like, what belt are we fighting for? I don't know who the journalist was at the start. He tried to ask, hey, what's this belt? Is McGregor stripped? Dana White kind of, yeah, don't worry about that. You let us worry about that. You worry about this fight. McGregor's champ. These guys are champ. It's the belt. All right, I don't know what the fuck that means. And then Brett Okamoto comes later on and tries again. I thought, this is great. Brett Okamoto, he's an OG. He's very good at what he does. Very smooth. And he's all like, Dana, just to clarify. And Dana's all like, oh, did you just get here? We started at 5. It's like, yeah, Dana, but you didn't fucking say anything, so give us the goddamn answers. And I appreciate, when him and even Ariel, they're both being very smooth, trying to get the answers that we want, and the fans, the people in attendance are booing, like lemmings, like, you're asking the same questions. Yeah. And it's like, these are the important questions, damn it. When you pitch a fight, you need a few things. You need to know who's fighting, you need to know when they're fighting, and where they're fighting. Oh, and if there's a belt, what's the belt they're fighting for? And we didn't know that. So really pissed me off how no one appreciated those guys asking the right questions, even if they were, repetitive. But yeah, what did you make of all that ridiculous garbage and Dana not wanting to say, hey, we've stripped Conor McGregor? Why do you think that is?
I think there's three ways of looking at this, and there's three different perspectives. There's the perspective of whether you like good fights and that's all you want to see, which is kind of my perspective. And I think Tony versus Khabib is a very good fight.
For sure.
Then there's a perspective of the belt situation and the kind of the people who love to keep this as like a sporting endeavor at all times. And then you can be mad about he didn't, nobody told us what belt is on the line. There's going to be 2 undisputed champions, it seems, and that's an absolute, as you said, an absolute shit show. And then there's looking at the perspective of the fighters and the UFC and everything. And I think that's the most interesting perspective to look from, because who does it benefit to strip Conor McGregor, really? Who does it really benefit? Does it benefit Tony Ferguson? No, because if Tony Ferguson wins, he wants to still be connected to Conor McGregor so he can get that huge fight. The same thing goes for Khabib. The same thing goes for their legacies. A lot of people said, these guys are not fighting for money, they're fighting for legacy. A win over Conor McGregor does more for their legacy than anyone else. Look at Dana White. I put out a tweet there earlier, kind of joking, and from WME and IMG and the UFC's point of view, if Tom Cruise wanted to push the next Mission Impossible 6 months forward, would they replace him with someone else or would they wait? I think they'd probably wait, wouldn't they? And Conor McGregor is by far the biggest star in the UFC. Why would the UFC and WME, IMG try to take that belt away from Conor McGregor when all he wants to do really is push it back? And does he even want to push it back? Because the only one who said he wants to come back in September is Dana White. Conor McGregor hasn't said that as far as I'm aware. So, there's that position. And then from Conor McGregor, as I always say almost in the show, what is he thinking? What is Conor McGregor thinking? Does he want to be stripped? Because who else was stripped there recently or gave up his belt anyway? George St. Pierre. So that could be a thing. If he drops that belt, goes, okay, Tony and Khabib, go in and fight for that. Let me take GSP. I'm going to have an absolute mega fight here. And that's a thing as well. So it's funny that the least important person, the least effect this stripping has on a person is Conor McGregor. It's Khabib Nurmagomedov and Tony Ferguson, Dana White, Ari Emanuel all should want him to keep the belt. For Conor McGregor, it doesn't really matter. He can have big fights either way. So it's a weird, odd situation where it seems like taking this belt off of Conor McGregor is going to affect Conor McGregor, but it actually affects everyone else and not him.
Yeah, I will say this though, if you're Tony and Khabib, you mentioned legacies and what does it really do for them and does it really matter? If you're Tony and Khabib and someone's like, hey, what's your highest achievement? And you say, well, I was the interim champion. I think if it was me, I'd be pretty pissed if I can't say, well, I was the full champion. I know Carlos Condit was the interim champion, a welterweight at one point, but I don't think anybody really sees him as a true UFC champion because he didn't beat GSP. Shane Carwin, I don't think people see him as a true UFC heavyweight champion because he never beat Brock Lesnar and he beat an interim champion. So I from their perspective, and Tony was saying that in the back and behind the curtain, they're saying that no, this is for the real belt, but then they don't want to admit it. I would certainly take that as disrespect, and I'd be frustrated if I was in their position, probably a way more than the way Stipe took it. I mean, here's an interesting point. I think it was Elias Theodorou, who apparently is a fighter, a spokesperson for many companies, and now some kind of law specialist. He brought up the point, is it possible that maybe they're not stripping Conor McGregor because if they do strip him, there's no longer the champions clause in his contract, and that makes it easier for him to leave? Because I think if you're a UFC champion, like I remember we spoke to Cyborg, and she said if she wins the belt, she has to stay for a year. Which, it's obviously been longer than a year, but I'm assuming it's easier to get out of your contract in the UFC if you're not the UFC champion.
Yeah, see, this is a tough one as well because he is a boxer as well. You must not forget that he fought Floyd Mayweather, and he's going to be under the Ali Act. So if he doesn't have that champions clause, is it Paul Gifter or one of those guys is probably the best to ask about that. I'm obviously not a law expert, even though you wouldn't know. You think I was, but it's tough. There's a few other conspiracy theories around as well that the UFC game is coming out and he's on the front of that, and he's on the front of that with 2 belts, and if he has no belts by the time it comes out, I'm not sure how true that is either. But I think it's everything that the Dana White and the UFC are doing right now is a negotiation tactic. Make no mistake about that. They want Conor McGregor to come back. If Conor McGregor came back tomorrow, they would take Khabib out of that fight and put him in against Tony Ferguson in 2 seconds. They don't care about those guys. Everyone in this is just a pawn in the game of money, basically. And it's interesting to see how it plays out. But it's definitely a mess. It's a mess for basically everyone involved, and it's funny. It's funny that Dana White has been put in this situation because he never really has before. He's always kind of the one that's been in control, and Conor McGregor's kind of just taken that away from him, And it's funny, he's kind of squirming in his boots and getting offended at the media for asking him questions that he doesn't have answers for, and he really should have answers for. And I'm kind of enjoying it, to be honest. MMA is, if you don't enjoy this insanity in MMA, it's the wrong sport for you, to be honest. And maybe it benefits me a little bit. I don't really care about titles and stuff. I just want to see good fights, and I want to see a bit of crack. And this is really perfect for me because I'm getting the great crack out of it.
It is entertaining, a great fight. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, the other thing about this is, will this fight even happen? Because we've seen these guys that were supposed to fight each other a number of times before. I imagine if it falls apart one more time, I don't know if I could take it. You know what? I'm not going to believe this fight is happening until I actually see both men in the octagon that night during the event. Before then, I just can't put my heart out there again. It's been broken too many times before.
The funny thing is, just before we let Sean go, it's like you don't really have a choice. Like what are the alternatives? Well, Khabib gets injured, so we're just not going to book him anymore. Well, they have to book him. It's like Tony, if he gets injured, they can't not book him. So at some point, they're going to have to keep booking him, and at some point, they're going to have to keep booking him together. So who knows? It might be another 5 years of heartbreaks before this fight eventually happens.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Sean, thanks so much for coming onto the program. Guys, make sure to follow Sean on Twitter at Sean Sheehan. BA, of course, Severe MMA is the show to listen to. He also does a lot of great work with Sherdog.com and his fact of the day, useless fact of the day. Make sure to check that out as well. A lot of really great stuff there. Sean, thanks so much for coming on the program. A big thank you to Colby Covington for coming onto the show. It was a lot of fun speaking with him. Of course, we had Pat Miletich, who's a legend, coming on the program as well. That was a lot of fun too. And of course, the guys, they're just guys off the block, just regular guys, Tyson Pedro and Tai Tuivasa, but they're taking over the pay-per-view in Perth at UFC 221, of course, with their friend Mark Hunt. It was a great time talking to them as well. Guys, just a quick reminder, if you are interested at UFC Perth, jump on YouTube and subscribe. We will be there, and there'll be a lot of content coming your way. That's youtube.com/Submission Radio. We won't be back next week, like we mentioned in the intro, but we'll be back in the week after. Stay safe, and thanks for tuning in.